Hi, my name is Amanda Croes. I am a student at the University of Aruba, currently in the academic foundation year. I've chosen psychology in social work as an elective, and today I will be talking a little bit about child development, more specifically about adverse childhood experiences, otherwise known as ACE. I chose this topic because it could basically be applied to anywhere in the world. It doesn't necessarily come from a specific household. It does not have anything to do with someone's household income or who they are, but rather the environment in which a childhood is raised. So it could happen in a household of affluent people, but it could also happen in poverty. So that's very interesting to me. And it's also interesting because people can easily relate to it. And you really do find out if you have ACE or have had an adverse childhood experience, and you might not even have known that you did. So it is really interesting to get to know a little bit about this topic. And so today I will be talking a little bit about how you can develop ACE, what effect adverse childhood experiences may have as an adult, and prevention. So stick around to find out a little bit more. I would like to start off by explaining a little bit what exactly is an adverse childhood experience. Well, according to the American Society for the Protection and Care of Children, an ACE are potentially traumatic events that occur during a children's lifetime. This means that children could have been victims or could have witnessed physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, domestic violence, parental substance abuse, mental illnesses, suicide or death, or have witnessed crime or imprisoned family. According to Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, research has demonstrated a strong relationship between adverse childhood experiences, substance use disorders, and behavioral problems. When children are exposed to chronic stressful events, their neurodevelopment can be disrupted. As a result, the child's cognitive functioning or ability to cope with negative or disruptive emotions may be impaired. Over time, and often during adolescence, the child may adopt negative coping mechanisms, such as substance or self-harm. Eventually, these unhealthy coping mechanisms can contribute to disease, disability, and social problems, as well as premature mortality. A social worker who wants to work with children should know what an adverse childhood experience is and how to detect it if a child has an ACE or more. This becomes a bit easier in the process of helping a child get over their trauma and the abuse. The aim that a social worker should have is to make sure that a child becomes happier and tries to grow up in a healthier environment and mental state. If you know exactly what ACE or ACEs a child possesses, it makes the process of helping a lot easier for the social worker, and you would know exactly where to start and how to tackle the problem. So knowing your ACEs is very important, especially as a social worker, if you intend on working with children in the future. There are social justice issues regarding this topic, especially in Aruba, a place where everybody tries to keep their business behind closed doors. It's a touchy topic. Two boys were murdered about a year ago, and a lot of people were outraged by this because you don't talk about abuse, but it still happens. So, as much as people are outraged and angry at first, it eventually dies down and the issue becomes non existent again. So, I would like to say that there are social justice issues regarding this topic, but a lot of times actions aren't taken. According to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, adverse childhood experiences have a tremendous impact on the future for children, especially when it comes to violence, victimization, and perpetration. This can also have an effect on lifelong health and opportunities that the children may miss. As a social worker, you have the opportunity to make sure that a child doesn't fall into a cycle of abuse, where they can also become perpetrators or victims all over again. You can break the normalization of abuse and help the child lead a long and healthy, successful life as well. Like I mentioned before, Adverse childhood experiences can happen to anyone, anywhere. Since I am an Aruban and I grew up in Aruba, in an all Aruban family, I understand what the culture is like and the mindset that people have. Talking about abuse, especially child abuse, is a very touchy and sensitive topic here. People here believe that your private business should be kept behind closed doors. So when there's talk of abuse that surfaces on top, people may act outraged, which is weird because abuse here is so normalized and people don't even know it. People think that abuse has to do with the blue spots that you see on a child's body or being murdered, but abuse can go in so many other ways. You can verbally abuse a child, and you can even have an effect on a child's growth by spanking them or hitting them, which, in a conversation about discipline, always shows up between Arubans here. So normalizing abuse is a very big problem that we have here. As a result, a lot of children grow up thinking that it is normal to get hit or to hit a child. People may also say that, yeah, I grew up being hit and I turned out fine, so I'll hit my child as well. There are so many contradictions in that sentence because if you did grow up fine, you would know that abuse is never okay. So to resort to abuse before anything else just goes to show that you are missing a lot of fundamentals when it comes to acknowledging what is right and what is wrong. People who say things like that don't acknowledge oftentimes that they are victims of abuse as well and that they have underlying traumas that they never got over. So to break the cycle, you have to acknowledge that you were a victim as well. And another way to break the cycle is by talking about it. Break the stigma. Realize that there is a problem and that it should be worth fixing. So I really do hope that talking about adverse childhood experiences and becoming aware of it and realizing the importance of it can make a huge change. By learning about topics like this, you educate yourself and you become more self-aware and more self-aware about the environment you are currently in. Do I have any relation at all to adverse childhood experiences? The answer is yes. Unfortunately, I do. But that's the case for most people growing up here. We don't know that we've encountered abuse because it is so normalized. The only difference is I grew up and I acknowledged it. I realized that I never wanted my children to be raised a certain way. Not exactly the way that I was raised. I want better for them. With that being said, being able to do my own little research on adverse childhood experiences, it made me more aware of what exactly I went through and what a lot of people that I know went through, but didn't really know it in the first place. I kept all of this in the back of my head, and I realized that it takes a lot to heal. Some people need therapy, some people need to talk about it, and some people need to acknowledge. Otherwise, you stay in a constant cycle, and it's hard to get out of. So, I am happy because now that I did experience it and I acknowledge it, I can help other people and I can help myself. So, what now? Well, the conclusion is simple. It has everything to do with the environment in which a kid grows up in. Place them in a bad environment, and the chances are they'll fall into a really bad cycle, repeating everything that they've gone through, never breaking the cycle, and always staying in abuse. Place them in a better environment, and they'll blossom. They'll become happy and healthy adults eventually. What I really hope that people will take away from discussing adverse childhood experiences is to acknowledge that it's real. Just because a child has gone through a difficult childhood doesn't mean that they're going to forget about it as adults. The chances are very high that the trauma will always stay with them unless they get the proper help and guidance that they need. As a social worker, you have the opportunity to help them blossom and flourish into great people that can help the community eventually. For more information, you can visit the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration at samhsa.gov. Center for Disease Control and Prevention at cdc.gov, and the childwelfare.org. I really hope that you learned a bit more and are more aware of adverse childhood experiences.